welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The Spa and Spa Life, the SPA, is for Seek Power Always, that power within you to do your bigger work in the world. For 2020, I am interviewing positive disruptors, and no one stands out more for me than Sheri Salata, who is the author of The Beautiful No and Other Tales of Trial, Transcendence, and Transformation. She is named Amazon best-selling new release and Apple Listen audiobook. The memoir has touched thousands of readers and inspired them to reimagine their lives. Later in the show, we're going to talk about how Sheri was for 20 years the executive producer for the Oprah Winfrey Show and then stepped into the limelight herself. Sheri, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
This is so fun to have you. It's been a while since we connected at the League. And
that's right. And it's 2020 now.
Right. And you were talking about that in your talk about, the vision and looking forward.
Right.
And it's so fun that here we are now actually talking about that.
That's how it works.
It's
magic. It's how it works.
It is magic. So I know for those who've maybe not read The Beautiful No yet, let's talk about what does that mean?
Well, it's the title story in the book, and the book is a memoir, but they're individual. I think they're little gems. They're little stories about things I've seen along the way, epiphanies I've had, amazing experiences that I've had. And The Beautiful No is literally the foundation of my spiritual life. And it's a story about how I got that job, that entry-level job at the Oprah show when I was 35 years old, broke, really needing a job, and how that opportunity came my way. And what the no was I had a big interview a short time before that. And for a job in advertising, I really thought I was going to get. And in fact, the executive producer nearly hired me in the room and then decided not to hire me. And so that no was brutal because not only I was in such scarcity and I was super desperate, but trying to put a smile on it, a sparkle on it. So hire me. But you can still, it still comes through. It shines through that kind of scarcity and desperation. And when that no happened, it was one of the most disappointing moments of my life. And and I could just feel myself sinking like a stone because I was out of moves. I'm 35. I haven't figured out my career yet. I was supposed to be somebody with some promise, according to my family. And I was pretty sad and depressed and literally the living embodiment of despair. And what happened was somebody got hired at the Oprah show, cleaned out an old closet looking for promo producers, and found my resume and brought me in to work, do some freelance work for the Oprah show and hired me shortly after. And I would like to tell you that I sorted that out right away, but it was a couple years later and maybe even more than that when I realized it was almost like oh my God, if I would have gotten that job that I was in such despair over not getting, I never would have quit it a short time later to go take a chance at the Oprah show. And obviously 20 years working for Oprah, from an entry-level position to I left, I was president of OWN, and it changed my life forever. And that none of that would have been possible had I gotten a bad yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things I love about this is we never know where that journey is going to take us and how things actually happen for us. And I remember when I was reading your book and you were talking about that first impact of the no and that happening when you were 33. And I think it's magical that this is happening today, because we're filming today on January 6th, which is my oldest daughter's 33rd birthday.
Wow.
And what's amazing is that, some people refer to that because that was, regardless of your religious background, a lot of people talk about it as your Jesus birthday, right? People, associate that as a time of transformation, of change and shift. And so many times we think that we should make it by a certain time, or we set these, limitations or parameters of what we think things should be. And one of the things I love about your journey and what you've done and how you've moved through life is that sometimes we hear like the people have a 20-year overnight success, right? That it's not that overnight success that we think it is, and that everything actually moves forward, for us, and really looking at what that journey really sets us up for and what that looks like. And I know now a lot of things that you're doing is really choosing how you want to spend your life. And, you're like doing things with your best friend, like with Nancy. So for those of you who don't know, she's the co-host of the Sheri and Nancy show, which is a popular podcast, and it's about living your dreams. And I'd love for you to talk about how you stepped into the podcast and what are your favorite things about that, because it feels like when you do your podcast, it's like we're in the living room with you.
I know. It's such a girlfriend show. Well, here is the truth. I didn't want to do it. Somebody suggested it, and I thought it was ridiculous. Like, who's going to listen to Nancy and I jibber jabbering about our lives? And also, I was such a TV girl that I was like, does anybody listen to these podcasts? Oh, was I ever wrong? We're about to hit 2 million downloads. Excuse me.
That's amazing. Good for you. I love that. I think people really love when people talk about real life things and their journey and their impact. And so what has been one of your favorite episodes with Nancy?
Well, they're usually about Nancy. I mean, because I'm more objective, I think. I'm more objective. We did an episode with Martha Beck where Martha literally took Nancy back to her childhood in the middle of the podcast, and it was nothing but revelations and epiphanies. It was amazing.
I love that. Oh, that is so great. So, you talked about how the Beautiful No really set you on a track of it being a spiritual experience, a spiritual journey. So what is your spiritual practices, and what does that look for you like on a daily basis?
Well, here's what I've gleaned from my early years is that the only person making things difficult for me was me. With my needing it to look a certain way, needing it to arrive at a certain time, like always, claiming to have great faith, but always behaving a little faithlessly.
I get that.
And so I would say my spiritual practice now, my biggest one is really the practice of the beautiful no. Things will come when they're right. All I have to do is put it out there and then really just focus on what vibration I'm putting out in the world. That my number one job is happiness.
Yes.
And that sounds to people who aren't familiar with this way of being and speaking about spirituality, that can sound frivolous. But I've come to see that tending to your own happiness is job one. There is raising children, making a home, running a talk show. Nothing's more important than tending to your own happiness, because that really is your offering to the world, to the people around you in the world. So my spiritual practice, what helps keep me in that place of alignment? Meditation. I'm a TM meditator. I'm always pushing for that twice a day and very sporadic on that second one, but I don't miss one meditation at least once a day. Trying to be super, super mindful. I'm also a student of Abraham Hicks. And I'm sure many of your viewers and listeners are familiar with that. I try to do some sort of spiritual reading before I go to bed every night. And this year in 2020, Nancy and I are working with our listeners on a dreaming practice, like really a specific 15-minute a day dreaming practice, and really putting some quantum muscle behind that whole idea. And knowing that, listen, I can tell the world is better when I'm happy.
Yes.
It's better for everybody I come in contact with. And so my happiness is my job.
I love that. I mean, talk about standing for, responsibility for the experience that you want to have and what you want to step into. So what dream are you putting quantum energy behind for 2020?
Yes. Well, my big dream is really calling in that love man. That is I have a love dream for 2020. I have lots of little ones, but mostly my dream is to continue to feel like every day, every week, every month I'm expanding.
Yeah.
And 2019 for me was I was cleaning up a lot of stuff, like really like that's not going to work. I moved. I moved from a big, huge city to a little, tiny, small town, and which is super energetically disruptive, and now glorious. At first, I was like, "What?" But now it's glorious, and I've continued to. I wrote a book. So all of a sudden, instead of being a behind the scenes person, I'm now on stages talking to people. And that was super uncomfortable for me for a while until I realized that who cares? Not everybody has, this isn't about being like, this is an offering. Here's my story. And whatever like fears that we have about shining or being in under the spotlight or sharing our story or being truthful and being vulnerable, that's the beauty of the middle of life. You
Yes.
really don't give a shit anymore about what everybody else is thinking. But and part two to that is I've come to see in these last 6 months that vulnerability is what calls forth the love.
Yes.
It isn't about being so put together and cool and, envied or, that kind of thing. It's about being vulnerable. It's, it's your wounds that call in the love.
Right. Oh, I love that. Well, I'm sending energy to you for that special person to show up. I think it's super exciting. And, the fact that you're willing to be vulnerable and be out there, then they get to know the real you. And that's the person who they want to spend their life with anyway.
Yes, just read the book.
Absolutely. Well, speaking about the beautiful no, again, in there you talk about if not now, when. What does that mean to you?
Well, that was really the clarion call when, this all bubbled up when I left my work with Oprah and Nancy left her work at a digital agency, and we decided we were going to create our own thing. And it's like, if not now, when? When are we doing this? When are we going to run our own company? When are we going to be the masters of our own lives? When are we doing that? And when are we going to tend to our health? When are we going to take care of ourselves? When are we going to literally manifest the love lives of our dreams? If not now, when?
Yeah.
And, there was another piece of that for me that was even more poignant, which was, if not now, maybe never. Because in some respects, the talking about things year after year after year is kind of a delay tactic from having to sit down in a chair and change your energy and change your perspective, focus on your thinking, and really put some attention behind the kind of life you want.
Yes. So important. One of the things that, at the end of each year, Carrie and I always look at like, what do we want to intend and what's it look like? And one of the things that we do is we in the afternoon, like the day before, we really set the intention for the next day, because we notice that if we don't set, important things that really want to move us forward early in the day, there becomes excuses where they don't happen and they just get pushed off, and then someday and those things happen. So I love that about if not now, when, like really setting intention of what your now is and what that looks like. You talked also in the book about that the world looked different when you got rid of busyness. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, even as I'm listening to you talk, I was thinking that, in my expanded and elevated 2020, one of the things that will be very important for me personally to focus on and to take care of is not getting caught up in those to-do lists.
Yes.
You know, that came up for me again with launching a book. And that initial touring, I was like, wow, you know, I could feel myself start to have that momentum toward to-do lists. And that just isn't really how I want to live anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like a to-do list is a tool, not a life driver. And for many years for me, I mean, I had a to-do list that as long as Santa Claus's list that you just could never get, it would never be done. It would never be checked out. So you'd never have that feeling of commitment. A to-do list for me today is like, stop at the dry cleaner, you know, don't forget this, you know, bibbity bobbity boo, just a couple little things. It isn't like the story of my life.
Right.
So now even it's kind of like what I'm trying to do is in the morning as part of, and this is a spiritual / life practice, it's kind of just sit in that intentional space and think about how the day is going to unfold. You know, for the meetings or interviews or errands that I'm going to do, just lightly thinking about how it's going to unfold and how it's going to be so pleasant and productive and not like sitting down in a linear way with all the little minutia around everything. And I just don't want to live like that anymore. So that's one of my big things. So if not now, when, to me, is about that call to action that we only have now.
Yes, I love that. And I love that you are doing a lot of contemplation about how you want to live your life and what to actually look like and what happens, you know, and just because we did certain things a certain way, and maybe people even know us in that way, doesn't mean we have to continue in that way. So, you know, when I was with the police department, you know, for 10 years. And when I retired from that, I actually had a course called From Clutter to Calm, where it was focusing a lot on the to-do and getting rid of the chaos and getting those things happen. But I was actually doing a lot of that because I needed the reliability and the predictability because my life was in chaos with the work that I was doing.
Right.
So that had a very important thing for myself and my clients at that time. But I too, you know, now in my 50s are really looking at, you know, do those things actually matter? And there are some basic things. Obviously, we want to have things in rhythm in our life and work, but do they actually matter? And I had a mentor of mine said that, you know, if something isn't going to mean anything to you in 5 years from now, why are you actually doing it?
Oh my gosh, that's so brilliant. I mean, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think, you know, to the point that you're bringing up, I have come to see that my life is a living, breathing thing. Yes. that requires care and tweaking and molding. It isn't like one and done. It isn't like these are going to be my principles of living and that's it. Because it's like, does this work? Does this make me feel good? Is this the kind of relationship that I want in my life? Do I enjoy spending time with these people? Do I like asking all those, like really just kind of looking at your life like a beautiful golden orb, and you're just kind of playing with the energy, and you're making tweaks and suggestions and little moves, and always kind of tinkering with your creation.
Absolutely. I mean, just definitely this living, breathing aspect of who we are. And so that leaves a little bit of unpredictability and possibility. And when we have possibility, we can step into that. And, you know, one of my mentors, Bo Eason, talks about the power of story and says that all we really have is our story, and to step into that. And you've been a storyteller throughout your whole life. Let's talk a little bit about what is the power of storytelling.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I had a front row seat at some of the most amazing, ordinary people's stories that have ever been told on the planet. Well, I'll tell you this: when Nancy and I launched our podcast, what we and our moving forward together, you know, doing work together, we said our mantra is going to be that the stories we tell ourselves are what make our dreams come true. And you know, over the last several years, what I've come to see is nothing more, as you're tending to your own happiness, which is the only job you really have.
Yes.
The story that you're telling yourself and about your life and about your dreams and about the people in your life, those are the stories that are creating outcomes. That is storytelling, the story you write yourself, the story you tell yourself, one of your ultimate creative tools.
Yeah, I love
because
that. And
as you tell that story, so it is. You are speaking
yes.
your life into being.
Oh, that is so powerful. And one of the things I love is that, you can be going down this trajectory where you talk about, the journey, and you can shift it, you can change it, and you can in a moment decide you want to go in a different direction. And one of the things is that you reinvented yourself in your 50s. And one of the things that propelled that was radical self-care. So let's talk a little bit about that, about what do you mean about radical self-care and how that shifted you?
Well, I mean, it would not, I would be telling you the absolute truth to say that for years and years and years, my own well-being was last on the list.
Yes.
That it was like, and nobody else's fault, nobody else's choice, really totally mine. It was just more exciting to tend to all these other exciting things and emergencies than to really sit down and excavate what I really wanted and what would make me feel good and what would feel like love from me to me.
Right.
So none of that got done. I'd make half-hearted attempts, and start something or try something, but it would be the first thing to go, when the phone would ring and there was a crisis at work. So what I came to see, so I was 56, sitting there and saying, something, this love piece for you, Sheri, is big. This love for yourself, and self-love. I circled around that, and certainly with all the teachers at the Oprah show for years. But this love for yourself piece, this is something that has to be, I believe, and at the time, that's what I was saying to myself, I believe this is everything you want is inside this piece. So if you say that no matter what, I'm going to love myself most, and I'm going to make all my decision tree is going to come from that space, then everything else is going to fall into place. So radical self-care meant that from the time I wrote about it in The Beautiful No to even to this moment, I'm still tweaking it. I'm still figuring out what that is and tweaking it, but it is front and center.
Yes. Yes. Well, in the book, you talked about that the life that you're creating is pink.
Yeah. My pink life, my pink life. Yes. Yes. That was, I was out and I read about this crazy experience out in the desert at a big detox center where all the movie stars go. And I had some really powerful moments. And one, I was working with this woman, Renee Cardenas, who is, she's like one of those sage wisdom keepers. And she put me through all these exercises where I, part of the thing is, you've got to release your past, even if it's great. You got to let that go in order to have a new future. It's like, it's not even real anymore. Your past is over. It's not even real. Your future hasn't come into being. You have to get comfortable somehow in creating in the now. So, yeah, so we did this big exercise. And at the end, I was finally able to envision this life of my dreams. And she made me put a color to it, and it was pink.
I love it. I love the idea of putting a color to it. So for our listeners who are setting their intention for 2020
Yes.
and looking to a new vision, I would love for you guys, whatever platform you're on, to put in the comments, what color is the color of your vision this year?
Oh, that's good.
It's fun. So, we talk about like health, right? And many teachers talk about creating a healthy boundaries. How do you view that?
Well, I will tell you, I've only really shifted my thinking on this in 2019. as I kept coming up across, like, I'm fascinated by the word boundaries. Like, anybody who teaches a course how to set boundaries, I'm all ears, because I know that's a weakness for me,
Right.
and has been a weakness for me. And I know I share that with millions of people, especially women, lots of people. And it comes up all the time, every book event. How do you set boundaries? I'm like, yep, I know. I'm asking the same question. But finally, what came to me was, there's something about that word that doesn't work for us. That's why we're always seeking and never finding what it means to set boundaries. That word is disconnective and it's separating. And that's just not energy that we lean into. You know, women, we're the connective tissue. Our energy is the connective energy. So it's, that concept is trying. We're stymied by it. But I do think, going back to what I was just saying about, if you switch that from setting boundaries, which is disconnective, to how do I love myself most in this moment, and use that to inform your decision making about what to say yes to, what to say no to, there's something softer about that, and something more of the divine feminine, I think, that is more helpful than like, how do I keep everybody out? It's like, you know, so and also it's a couple of like just strategic tips, you know, because really what everybody struggles with, as I've been talking to women across America, is, how do I say no? And the thing is, first of all, you got to have some tips. You have to have a strategy. You got to give yourself a beat. Can I get back to you? So you're not flummoxed into a poor yes. Can I get back to you? And then you come back and realize you don't have to give somebody a 15-minute explanation of why you can't do something.
Yes.
That would be the other thing I would do. Well, have a seat. I have this very long story about why I can't twist myself in a pretzel to please you. So it's kind of like, no explanation other than, thank you for asking. I won't be able to do that. Thank you for asking. I'm not going to be able to say yes. And just giving yourself time to breathe. And also remembering that if you are using, how do I really love myself in this moment with this decision, it becomes super easy.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you were talking, it reminded me of a book called Essentialism. And that book is a great tool in being able to really ascertain for yourself what is important to you and how to say no, and to remember that you are the asset, right? That no matter what, if something happens to you, if you're not taking care of yourself, and this is where that extreme self-care comes in, then everything else crumbles based on that.
I love that. You are the asset. That's right. And that you must be the caretaker. You must be the steward of your own well-being. You must. Nobody else is going to do that for you.
Right. And other people's agenda and other things and even fun things, right, that you might want to do, you can't do all of it. And it may not fit into where you are now or what your focus is or what you want to do. And when you were talking about boundaries, you know, another word that is, you know, typically used with that is having balance. And one of the things I learned about balance is that you can't have balance, right? Because you're always trying to balancing everything. If anything, you're actually trying to counterbalance the things that you're choosing to say yes to, and to have more harmony in your life. Because harmony really is, like you were saying, about being more feminine in the flow. You can see what is in harmony, what am I having more of, what's the flow, what's it look like, versus boundaries and balance, which, you know, are so like constricting, versus what are the things that are in flow and what are the things that really feel good.
100%. And harmony is the word. Harmony is the thing. Harmony is what brings joy and peace and ease and flow. And after many times being asked about how I achieved work-life balance, which I never did, you know, I finally realized that whole concept just made me feel bad about myself. And then I had to say, but do you even believe it? Do you believe in it? Do you believe in it? And the answer was no. But I do believe that we can make those loving decisions for ourselves that are in flow with harmony.
Right. Yeah.
And listen, life is not a mathematical equation. It's like sometimes your new puppy needs some attention, and sometimes your writing needs attention, and sometimes you got to do the dishes, and sometimes you've got to wash your hair, and sometimes you've got to go out and like sweep the front stoop. You, you know, I think the key here for me, and I have found, is get so in tuned and intentional and intuitive that how you flow your energy is just done with such ease and co-creative flow with the universe that it's easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, as promised, I want to circle back around to your career with Oprah Winfrey.
Yes.
And, this was a life-altering, 20-year career with Oprah. And you had this day-to-day hits and misses. And there was a final executive, as the final executive producer of the Oprah Winfrey Show, you were featured in a docuseries, season 25. Now, this is Oprah behind the scenes. And these were things that you got to see all the time, things that were working and not working. Right. And, you were also president of Harpo Studios and of OWN. Now, you saw so many things behind the scene. I've got kind of two questions in here. What would have been something that would surprise people that you maybe saw behind the scenes, something interesting that maybe no one even saw? Maybe it was just a nuance that you saw behind the scenes. And then what gifts did you take away with working with Oprah over 20 years?
Well, I mean, the behind the scenes show, the season 25, it's a reality show. It's a docuseries. And so obviously it doesn't follow everybody's single employee, every staffer 24 hours a day. It just hits the big drama points, right? So, what is true is the team over that 20-year period, or it was 25 years. I was there with Oprah for 20 years. The show went on for 25 years. That team was the best. Every single person was absolutely unbelievable and contributed from a soul deep level. And there was a dance, there was a harmony that was indeed unlike anything. And the gifts were, listen, to go into the so-called office every day. For me, it was the studio. To be paid to build a spiritual life was the greatest benefit, the greatest company benefit I can think of anybody offering. I was a seeker. I spent all my 20s in the self-help book aisles, looking. What is it? What it is? The first thing that kind of cracked me open was Marianne Williamson, A Return to Love. And that was right before I went to work for Oprah, and maybe a couple years. But all of a sudden, I mean, there they are, the parade of sages and wisdom keepers and authors who had this gorgeous wisdom about living life to share. And I just took the ride. I took the ride, and I knew it. I'm like, wow. This is the gold of this experience.
Oh, that is so wonderful. I had the opportunity, actually, another guest I had on my show was Reggie Wells, who was a long-term makeup artist.
Yes.
For Oprah, really shifted how makeup was for women of color, and, being on, the cover of magazines and all of that. And one of the things that he talked about in our interview was just the magic that happened as being part of something that was just, everyone knew that this was something that was making an impact that would have, years and decades to come, and how it flourished his ability to be an artist. Yeah. And it's just so beautiful to hear from different people how this, co-creative experience that you guys all had together over such a duration had such a positive impact, not only on the listeners, but also for people who got to participate behind the scenes, which is pretty amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, when we talk about like creating like our life, and just, you've talked about how, we have to be responsible for our life, and that, that's where your power lies, is being responsible in your life and what that looks like. And I believe that that also really carries over into your personal space. You're now living in, a new place in the world, and you've created your home. And I believe that each room, has an energy and has an experience. We feel different in our bedroom versus our kitchen versus our office.
Right.
What is your favorite room in your home and why?
Okay, this is going to be really crazy. I really do love my home. It's like a little jewel box. And you're right. Every room has a different energy. And I've only been in here a year. And I would say what one of my things for 2020 was I need to do another pass. Like there needs to be another bit of pull for donation. Pull for donation. Sometimes I'm very sentimental. It's hard for me to let go of things, but I can feel it's like too much. I need to do that. So I can answer that question for you after that, after I do that process again in this first half of 2020. But I will say my favorite part of my space is the outside. I did it. I mean, I have a chef's garden. Like right now, the broccoli, onions, garlic, kale, peas, strawberries, lettuce. Everything's growing, and it's beautiful.
Wow.
And because I'm in Northern California, so you've got to sometimes wear a little sweater or something. It isn't like Southern California, but there is the time I can spend outside is just having spent most of my life in Chicago. So good. So good.
So is it true that your outside garden area is actually a tourist attraction?
Yes. Oh, I know. No, I found this amazing guy. Again, the miracle of life. I was flipping through a magazine. I was in Napa Valley a year ago in November, flipping through a magazine. I see this ad for Edible Gardens, the Edible Garden Company. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to buy a house here. I'm going to call him. I call, he answers, we meet. He goes, what do you want? I go, I want to be enchanted. And I don't want to spend a ton of money, but I want to be enchanted. And what's ended up, what we created together is super enchanting. It's really beautiful. But here was the thing. We were halfway through the process, and he sat me down and said, I have to tell you, we ran that ad one time, and you're the only one who called.
Wow.
And I go, it was just for me. And what's happened is because people literally are driving from other towns in the valley to come see it because it's really lovely. It's an amazing thing. It's kind of like what you do. Like I grew up in the suburbs. So picture a town and a house and then a front yard, side yard, backyard. I mean, where I grew up, you just plant grass and maybe some hedges and some flowers. Like this is very different. And it's planted. It isn't just lawn. And and it's really gorgeous. And so now he's got all this business coming his way because he ran that one ad just for me.
Oh, that's so fun. Well, next time I'm in Northern California, I'm going to check it out.
Yes, please.
That'll be fun. Okay, so since you are a creator and you actually are spending time really visualizing what you're going to have going forward, as you're thinking about the things you're letting go in your home and this new creation that you're creating, I'd love for you to take a moment and just kind of mentally go room to room. And what are you intending to be your favorite room?
Well, I really must say, I really do love my bedroom. I got a great bed with a really huge kind of velvet upholstered headboard that almost hits the ceiling. And I had two gold antique mirrors that I've had since back in the day in Chicago on either side, which is really nice. So it's cozy. I can look out in the garden. It's really, really pretty. Another one of my most favorite things to do in all my houses, so this is the third time I've done it, is what I do is I spend, and this I spend some money on, I do taffeta white drapes that billow with like a 8 to 10 inch puddle. And so they look like wedding dresses on every window. And I always keep my houses white, and then I use artwork to be the color. So my art, which I hang everywhere, is the color, but everything's really white and super simple.
I love that. Oh, how fun.
You can see the kitchen.
Yeah,
My kitchen's
I
white.
see it.
And like right over where I'm looking out is my front yard, which is an outdoor dining area and a hedge and some hummingbirds and some roses. My little like hangout, like main room is small. There's a bookshelf that needs to be curated a little bit, but it's very, very cozy, a little fireplace. And I really, one of my favorite rooms is my butler's pantry, which is off that way, which I put in. Um, this is the craziest thing. My mom always loved good ice. So if she was coming to my apartment in Chicago for dinner, she goes, "Are you going to have good ice?" Meaning I would go and buy a bag of ice. So when I moved to LA, I put an ice machine in my house with good ice, thinking about her. And now I can't live without it. So I did an ice machine, a little zinc bar, lots of good storage. It's really lovely.
Oh my God. So what's considered good ice, the square compact or the chipped ones?
No, it's square, but it's like professional ice. It isn't just out
No
in
janky ice.
yeah, it's not just from trays in your like I grew up. It's like fill the ice cube trays. No, this is like the machine, it makes good ice. It's nice for cocktails.
Oh, how fun. I love that. Well, you definitely are creating this, lifestyle within your home that is just so welcoming. And you are also the co-founder of a lifestyle brand, The Pillar Life.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's something that Nancy and I created together. We decided when we dreamed up these fabulous lives we were going to live together, and we said, both of us tend to have this habit of getting excited and then losing steam. So we created the Pillar Life Guidance System to really help us stay on track, which is the 8 areas of our lives that matter to us: health and wellness, spirituality and happiness, romance and sex, friends and family, creativity and innovation, sanctuary and beauty, money and abundance, adventure and discovery. Those are the 8.
Yes.
And really commit to coming up with some dreams in each of those areas, and then giving ourselves some little practices to kind of push those dreams into being. And we talk about it all the time. So that's kind of the Pillar Life is our digital platform, thepillarlife.com. And we have all kinds of things on it, but it's basically our exploration of a system that we created to support us.
Oh, that is so fun. I love that. I mean, I think that I think sometimes people forget that little tweaks can make such a huge difference in your experience of your life and what you can do. And I love that you pay attention to these different areas, because so many times people will focus on their relationships at the expense of their finance or their health as opposed to their friendships. And so, we have to look at all of it, right? And this is where the harmony
forget
part
about
comes
it.
in.
It's like we go unconscious. It's like, oh my God, didn't I say I was going to start a yoga practice last year and I never did it? It's like, that's why it's just you gotta just kind of keep priming the pump there.
Right.
It's so interesting. I've been talking to so many women, and every now and then I run across somebody who is, they're in a low point. And it's like, I just don't know how to begin. I don't know how to begin. You talk about living the life of your dreams. I don't know how to begin. And I'm like, I so get it. I so get it. So drink a glass of water and go for one walk around the block and have a salad today.
Yeah.
And call somebody who loves you and will support you. And it's like little things. It's like all you have to do is get to hope. In terms of your vibrational stance, all you have to do is get to hope. And once you get to hope, then maybe you can stir the pot a little bit more to get to like hopeful certainty, and then you stir the pot a little bit more, and then you start watching what happens. Who calls? What opportunities come your way? What wonderful thing happens? And all the time, just in a state of, once you get to that place, it's easy to stay in a constant state of appreciation.
Yes.
Which is the mothership of manifestation, right?
Absolutely. It's it's really, who do we spend our time with, right? Who is it, I mean, when you're doing those things, it's great it's so great you have Nancy, and I've really cultivated the friends in my life, they're my lifelines. I mean, these are the people that I call to be like, hey, let's lift each other up and have that happen. I mean, doing it together is such a huge thing to move forward.
Yeah, and it's a different model. I'm going to say that too. It's a different model. I mean, earlier in our friendship, Nancy and I have been friends for 30 years. We would just get together and do a stomp around, as she likes to call it, where we would say, who had the worst week? Who's being terrible to me? I want you to hate them too. Whatever that was, that is not upliftment. And
Right.
so now, I mean, we very consciously say, okay, a 2-minute stomp around, and then we're going to solution. And then we're going for what's working. And then we're going for appreciation.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I definitely hear, as we're kind of winding down here, is that, you've been on a book tour for a while now. And I just want to, for our listeners, whether you're watching here or, you're listening, I just want to hear from a woman who came from behind the scenes, how much out in the limelight she is now. I mean, she's been featured on the Dr. Oz show today, Happier with Gretchen Rubin, Happier in Hollywood, the Model Health Show, the Good Life Project, the JJ Virgin podcast, the Marie Forleo podcast, Almost 30, the Amy Porterfield podcast, Wellness Mama Project, the Lady Gang, and Earn Your Happiness with Lori Harder.
Oh my God, I've been so busy. I've been so busy. Well, listen, isn't that lovely? Yes. First of all, I've said yes to all that because those people are great and you're great. And I really appreciate the opportunity to have these conversations. I mean, it's generous, and I there's nothing I'd rather talk about. That really is the truth. At first it was odd and uncomfortable, as anything new is. And then I would just pat myself on my right knee and say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And the truth is what softened all that, what eased all that new limelight-itis was the people, the readers. The readers would come up and say, okay, so that happened to you. Well, this happened to me. And this is what I did with it. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, I know this. We're just all sharing our stories.
Yes.
We're just sharing our stories.
Right. Right. And they can have a very emotional, aspect to it as well. And I know that on the Dr. Oz show, there was a very emotional experience that happened on that. And I would love for you to share that experience.
Oh my gosh.
Listeners.
This is talk about a behind the scenes moment. So, I mean, that's a big booking. He's a big, huge national show. My publisher's thrilled. Of course, it's so lovely of him and his executive producer to do that for me. So off I go to New York, woo, the Big Apple. And now I'm in the green room. Oh my God, right? And people are coming in to steam my outfit and to powder my nose. And I'm just like, oh my God. Well, there's in the talk show biz, there's 2 things that you have to do as a guest. Number 1, be a good guest. And number 2, don't read the prompter. Don't read the teleprompter because your eyes start going. Right. So don't read the teleprompter and be a good guest. So get ready to go out on stage. Dr. Oz, I'm like, oh my God, they're going to intro me and I'm going to do a walk-on. And then I'm peeking out from behind the curtain. My name is in a big screen behind Dr. Oz. I'm like, oh my God, this is too much. Then he starts introducing me and it sounds like I cured cancer or something. So out I come and I see Dr. Oz and it's like, all I can see, first of all, is his makeup. And I'm like, oh my God, he's got so much makeup on. And we sit down, like I'm discombobulated for sure. And the studio audience, yay. And the cameras are coming in. And I'm like, oh my God, right off the bat, I'm reading the prompter. I'm seeing myself. I'm reading the prompter. I'm like, stop reading the prompter. So Dr. Oz says to me, I hear you have a confession to make. Oh. And I go, okay, now I can be a really good guest because confession's a really good word. I do have a confession to make, Dr. Oz. And I basically told him, and it's a chapter in my book, that when he used to come to Harpo Studios, I would run and hide from him. I'd wave at him from afar and I'd run and hide from him because I was so ashamed. I was smoking cigarettes. I was way overweight. I clearly was not taking care of myself. I mean, in the control room, I'd probably have a latte, a Diet Coke the size of a garbage can, and whatever else I was doing then. And I felt so much shame about it. And I just didn't want to get close to him for him to see that. I didn't want to have to hear anything if he were to say something. And I basically confessed to him. I go, "Oh my God, I was always running from you because I felt so embarrassed." And he said, "Well, you know what, Sheri? This is all on camera. You know what, Sheri? I thought you didn't like me."
Mm.
And I went, "Oh my God," I almost burst into tears right there. Then I would have been a really good guest. But it threw me, and I was like, "Oh my God, oh my God. No, not only did I like you, I liked you so much that my shame was proportionate to the amount I liked you." And then we had this healing moment. And of course we did. It was like, "Oh my God, no, 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 no." And it was lovely. But I went away from that. And on the limo ride back to the hotel, I thought, how many times do we do that in our lives? That our shame of what we're not, or what we haven't fixed about ourselves, or our habits or our ways, our shame keeps us from being vulnerable and connecting with other people. I was like, I wonder how many other people think I don't like them.
Mm.
And that's what shame does. And that's why bringing it to the light and being really vulnerable and open with what's going on with you gives everybody else permission to do the same thing. I mean, gosh, that's Oprah 101.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for your courage, right? To really stand in that. And that's one of the ways I see you as a positive disruptor, is that all the things that may be a little off and your journey, that you're opening and you're being vulnerable to share that, not only to call in your man, but to have people have a platform to be able to recognize themselves and to know that we all are fallible. We all have these things that, we think people are seeing glaringly about us and have these maybe judgments around. But when we speak them and we put them out there, it allows not only healing, but for people to recognize themselves
Yeah.
and to really see, well, what is the life that they want to live here in the now. And I just so appreciate you, sharing your time and being here. And I know that our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you. How can they connect with you?
Well, there are The Beautiful Now. Read The Beautiful Now. I think that's a really great starting place. Thepillarlife.com is the site that Nancy and I run together. And you can always check where I'm going to be out in the world at sherisalata.com.
Perfect. I love that. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, just that, yay to 2020 and for all of us. And this is in this moment, in this now, we have such an opportunity to rise. And every day I'm looking for the opportunity to do that for myself.
I love that. Thank you so much. And so great to see you. And I love what you're doing. And I so appreciate you being here on the show. And I just want to thank all of our listeners because, the one absolute resource that we get to choose what we do is our time. And we so appreciate you taking the time, to be here and creating community. This is how we expand in the world. This is how we lift each other up to be able to do that. I'd love for you all out there listening to, rate and review, because that's also how it gets the word out. Make sure that you also listen to Sheri and Nancy's podcast and rate and review there as well, because we want goodness to spread and get out in the world. So that's
sure
how
do.
you can support us, by supporting you. And we just thank you so much for all being here and listening in and being the platform to support each other. So until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.